What happens when a former attorney general tries to discredit a rising Democratic star, only to have her systematically dismantle his credibility with receipts he never saw coming? On a tense afternoon in a congressional hearing room, Bill Barr made a critical mistake. He called Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett a liar. Big mistake. Because what happened next wasn't just a political clapback. It was a masterclass in preparation, prosecutorial precision, and the kind of evidence-based takedown that political operatives study for years afterward. This is the story of how one underestimated Congresswoman brought down one of the most controversial figures in recent political history. Not with insults, not with theatrics, but with documents, timestamps, and a level of receipts that would make an accountant jealous. Stay with me, because this gets wild. Who is Jasmine Crockett? Before we dive into the confrontation that went viral, you need to understand who Jasmine Crockett is, because her background makes what happens later even more devastating. Jasmine Crockett isn't your typical politician. She's a civil rights attorney from Texas who built her career in the courtroom before ever setting foot in Congress. She graduated from Bowie State University and Howard University School of Law and spent years defending people who couldn't defend themselves. When she ran for Congress in Texas's 30th District in 2022, she wasn't backed by establishment money or political dynasties. She won because she outworked everyone and spoke directly to voters about issues that mattered: criminal justice reform, voting rights, and holding powerful people accountable. Her colleagues quickly learned something important. You don't want to be unprepared when questioning her. She doesn't do political theater for clicks. She does her homework every single time. One Democratic staffer told reporters, "Jasmine prepares for hearings like she's preparing for trial because in her mind she is." Who is Bill Barr? Now, Bill Barr, you probably know him, but let's refresh. William Barr served as Attorney General under two presidents, George H.W. Bush in the early 1990s, and then Donald Trump from 2019 to 2020. His second term was controversial, to put it mildly. Barr became Trump's most powerful defender in the Justice Department. He released a summary of the Mueller report that critics said misrepresented its findings. He ordered federal agents to clear peaceful protesters from Lafayette Square. He made public statements about election fraud that experts said undermined public confidence in voting. When Barr finally broke with Trump after the 2020 election, saying there was no evidence of widespread fraud, some praised him for standing up, but others said it was too little, too late. The damage was done. By the time he appeared before Congress in 2023, Barr had rebranded himself as a legal expert and political commentator. He'd written a book. He was doing the talk show circuit. He was trying to rehab his image. And that's when he walked into Jasmine Crockett's crosshairs. The hearing the House Judiciary Committee had convened to discuss Department of Justice oversight and the politicization of federal law enforcement. It was a highly charged hearing with Republicans accusing the DOJ of targeting conservatives and Democrats pushing back on claims that the department had been weaponized under Biden. Bill Barr was there as a witness, ostensibly to provide his expert perspective on maintaining DOJ independence. The irony wasn't lost on Democrats. Several representatives questioned Barr about his tenure. Some questions were softballs, others had more edge, but the exchanges were relatively typical until Jasmine Crockett's turn. The setup: when Crockett's 5 minutes began, the energy in the room shifted. If you watch the C-SPAN footage, you can see it. Barr straightened in his chair. Crockett had a stack of papers in front of her. Always a bad sign if you're a witness. She didn't start with pleasantries. "Mr. Barr, you've spent considerable time today talking about the independence of the Department of Justice and how important it is that the Attorney General not take political direction from the President. Is that a fair characterization of your testimony?" Barr nodded. "Yes, Congresswoman. The Attorney General must be independent." "Good. I'm glad we agree on that principle." Crockett paused, the kind of pause trial lawyers use before they spring the trap. "So I'd like to ask you about a few specific instances during your tenure." The first question: Crockett pulled out her first document. "On June 1st, 2020, you ordered federal law enforcement to clear Lafayette Square of peaceful protesters. President Trump then walked to St. John's Church for a photo opportunity. Multiple reports indicated you gave this order shortly after a phone call with President Trump. True or false?" Barr shifted. Congresswoman, that's an oversimplification. True or false, Mr. Barr? The situation was more complex. I'll take that as true. Thank you. Crockett moved quickly, not letting him regain footing. On February 11, 2020, you overruled federal prosecutors to recommend a lighter sentence for Roger Stone, the president's friend and political ally. This happened hours after President Trump tweeted that the original sentencing recommendation was horrible and very unfair. True or false? Barr's jaw tightened. I made that decision based on my judgment. True or false? I reviewed the case and made a determination. So true. Thank you. The denial, you could see Barr getting frustrated. He wasn't used to being cut off, to having his explanations dismissed. He was William Barr, former Attorney General of the United States. Crockett continued. On March 24, 2019, you released a 4-page summary of the Mueller report, before the actual report was available. Multiple legal experts and even members of Mueller's team said your summary mischaracterized the report's findings about obstruction of justice. Do you dispute that characterization? I absolutely dispute it, Barr said firmly. My summary was accurate, but Robert Mueller himself wrote you a letter saying your summary did not fully capture the context, nature, and substance of his investigation. You received that letter, correct? Mueller's team had concerns about media coverage. Did you receive a letter from Robert Mueller expressing concerns about your characterization? Yes, but, Crockett cut him off again, thank you. And this is when Barr made his fatal mistake. He leaned forward, clearly irritated, and said, Congresswoman, with all due respect, you're mischaracterizing my record. Frankly, you're not being truthful about the timeline or context of these decisions. The room went silent. Jasmine Crockett slowly looked up from her notes. Her expression didn't change. But if you know anything about courtroom dynamics, you know that's when the prosecutor has you exactly where they want you. I'm sorry, Mr. Barr. Are you calling me a liar? Barr hesitated, but only for a second. I'm saying your characterizations are inaccurate. So to be clear, you're saying I'm lying about documented events that happened during your tenure as Attorney General? I'm saying you're presenting a misleading narrative. Crockett nodded slowly. Okay, thank you for that. She reached for her second stack of documents. Let's talk about receipts. Document dump. What happened next is the kind of thing they'll teach in congressional hearing preparation seminars for years. Crockett didn't just have talking points. She had documentation. Timestamps, email chains, official memoranda. She had been waiting for this moment. Mr. Barr, you said I'm mischaracterizing the Lafayette Square incident. Let me submit into the record the Inspector General's report from June 2021. She held up the document. This report found that the Park Police did clear protesters from Lafayette Square at your direction, and that this clearing happened shortly before President Trump's planned visit. The report specifically noted that Attorney General Barr was present at the scene. The timeline is documented. Are you disputing the Inspector General's findings? Barr started to respond, but Crockett wasn't done. And regarding Roger Stone, let me submit the resignation letter from Aaron Zelinsky, one of the federal prosecutors on that case. Mr. Zelinsky testified that there was political interference in that sentencing recommendation. He said, and I'm quoting directly, the department instructed us to change our sentencing memo to be more lenient. Were these prosecutors lying, Mr. Barr? I made a decision based on, I'm asking if they were lying when they said there was political interference. Barr paused. I made a decision that I believed was appropriate. That's not an answer to my question. The Mueller letter, but Crockett's most devastating moment came when she addressed the Mueller report summary. You said I was mischaracterizing your handling of the Mueller report. Let me read directly from Robert Mueller's letter to you, dated March 27, 2019. She pulled out the letter and began reading. The summary letter the department sent to Congress and released to the public late in the afternoon of March 24 did not fully capture the context, nature, and substance of this office's work and conclusions. There is now public confusion about critical aspects of the results of our investigation. Crockett looked up. Mr. Barr, Mueller, your own special counsel, said your summary created public confusion. He said it didn't capture the context of his work. That's not my characterization. Those are his words. Were you aware of this letter when you testified today that your summary was accurate? I was aware of the letter, and you still came here and said my characterization was inaccurate. Your characterization lacks context. The context is that Robert Mueller said you misrepresented his findings, the phone records, but Crockett wasn't finished. She had one more piece of evidence that would seal Barr's fate. Mr. Barr, you've consistently maintained that you made independent decisions as Attorney General without political pressure from President Trump. Is that still your testimony?
Yes.
So you're saying President Trump never called you to discuss active cases or investigations? Barr hesitated. Lawyers in the room could see where this was going. The president and I had conversations, but I made my own decisions. How many conversations? I don't recall the exact number. Crockett pulled out another document. According to White House phone logs obtained through FOIA requests, which I'm submitting into the record, you had at least 47 documented phone calls with President Trump during your 22-month tenure. That's more than 2 calls per month. Several of these calls occurred within 24 hours of major DOJ decisions involving Trump allies or investigations into his political opponents. She let that sink in. 47 calls, Mr. Barr. Are you telling this committee that in 47 phone calls with a president known for pressuring officials, he never once asked you about a case? Barr's face had gone red. My conversations with the president are privileged. I'm not asking about the content. I'm asking if you discussed cases, yes or no. The president would sometimes mention cases. Thank you. The final blow. Crockett's time was almost up, but she had saved her most damaging evidence for last. Mr. Barr, let me submit one final document. This is from your own book, One Damn Thing After Another, published in 2022. She opened to a marked page. On page 547, you write, and I'm quoting directly from your book, Trump would call me periodically about cases he was interested in. I had to manage these conversations carefully. That's your own admission, in your own words, that President Trump called you about cases. She closed the book. So when you said my characterization was inaccurate, when you suggested I was lying, you were contradicting your own published memoir. Were you lying in your book? Or are you lying now? The room erupted. Republicans called for order. Democrats were stunned at the methodical destruction they'd just witnessed. News cameras captured Barr sitting frozen, unable to formulate a response. Crockett gathered her papers. I yield back my time. Immediate reaction. The video clip went viral within hours. Not days, hours. By that evening, Jasmine Crockett was trending on Twitter with over 300,000 tweets. The hashtag Receipts Queen was created. Political commentators from both sides couldn't stop talking about it. MSNBC played the clip on a loop. Rachel Maddow called it the most thorough evisceration of a witness I've seen in 20 years of covering Congress. Even some conservative commentators had to give credit. One Fox News analyst said, "Look, I don't agree with her politics, but that was impressive preparation." Barr walked into that unprepared, but it wasn't just political junkies who noticed. The clip broke through to mainstream social media. TikTok creators made reaction videos. YouTubers broke down the exchange. Meme accounts had a field day. One viral tweet summed it up. Jasmine Crockett really brought 47 receipts to a 5-minute hearing. That's 4 receipts per minute. That's efficiency. Career impact for Bill Barr. The damage was immediate and lasting. Within a week, 3 major news networks canceled his upcoming appearances. Publishers reportedly had concerns about his credibility for future book projects. Law firms that had been considering him for high-profile consulting work quietly backed away. More importantly, the exchange destroyed his carefully constructed post-Trump narrative. Barr had been trying to position himself as a principled conservative who ultimately stood up to Trump's worst impulses. But Crockett's evidence showed a pattern of political interference and selective memory that couldn't be explained away. Legal ethics experts began questioning whether Barr had been truthful in other congressional testimonies. 2 former Justice Department officials called for an investigation into whether he'd perjured himself in previous hearings. One George Washington University law professor wrote in The Atlantic, "The Crockett hearing didn't just expose Barr's role in politicizing the DOJ, it exposed how he's been rewriting that history in real time, hoping no one had the receipts. Someone did." Crockett's rise for Jasmine Crockett. The hearing was a turning point. Overnight, she went from a freshman representative to a Democratic star. Fundraising for her re-election campaign jumped 400% in 2 weeks. National Democratic groups started calling about future leadership opportunities. But more importantly, she became the model for how Democrats could effectively challenge Republican witnesses. Her approach, methodical, evidence-based, unflappable, showed that you didn't need to yell or create viral soundbites through theatrics. You just needed to do your homework. Other Democratic representatives started adopting her style. Before major hearings, staffers would ask, "Do we have Crockett-level receipts?" One senior Democratic strategist told Politico, "Jasmine showed Democrats how to win these exchanges. Come with evidence, not just talking points. Make them defend their own contradictions. Let the facts do the work." Long-term implications. The Crockett-Barr exchange also had broader implications for congressional oversight. It demonstrated the power of FOIA requests, document preparation, and using witnesses' own words against them. Committee staffers began investing more time in pre-hearing research. The standard for evidence-based questioning rose across committees. Witnesses started preparing more carefully, knowing that unprepared testimony could be fact-checked in real time. Legal scholars pointed out that Crockett had essentially conducted a courtroom-style cross-examination, something that rarely happens effectively in congressional hearings. She controlled the pace, limited Barr's ability to filibuster, and built her case document by document. Georgetown law professor Jonathan Turley, a frequent Republican witness himself, wrote, "Crockett's questioning of Barr should be required viewing for law students. She demonstrated every principle of effective cross-examination: impeachment by prior inconsistent statement, document authentication, and witness control. It was textbook." What made it work? So why did this confrontation have such lasting impact when countless congressional hearing moments fade into obscurity? First, preparation. Crockett didn't just have one document, she had layers of evidence. When Barr tried to deflect, she had another receipt. When he denied, she had his own words. It wasn't just a gotcha moment, it was a systematic dismantling. Second, restraint. Crockett never raised her voice. She didn't insult Barr personally. She didn't play to the cameras. She just presented evidence and asked simple questions. That made it impossible for Barr or his defenders to claim she was being unfair or conducting a witch hunt. Third, she used Barr's own credibility against him. The most devastating evidence came from his own book and his own memos. She didn't rely on partisan sources or disputed interpretations. She let Barr impeach himself. Fourth, timing. She saved her strongest evidence for last, after Barr had already committed to his denials. By the time she revealed the phone logs and book quotes, he'd already painted himself into a corner. Broader context, the Crockett-Barr exchange happened at a crucial moment in American politics. Trust in institutions was at historic lows. Political polarization was intensifying. Many Americans felt that powerful people never faced real accountability. Crockett's takedown mattered because it showed that accountability was still possible. That thorough preparation and good faith questions could still expose wrongdoing. That freshman representatives could stand up to former cabinet officials. It also highlighted the importance of public records and transparency. Every document Crockett used was obtained through legal channels: FOIA requests, Inspector General reports, public testimonies. She proved that the systems designed for oversight could still work when people put in the effort. The current landscape today, Jasmine Crockett is considered one of the most effective questioners in Congress. Her hearing prep sessions are legendary. Witnesses know that testifying before a committee where she sits requires extra preparation. Bill Barr, meanwhile, has largely retreated from public life. He still does occasional interviews, but his influence has waned significantly. The historical consensus about his tenure as Attorney General has hardened, and the Crockett hearing is frequently cited as a defining moment. More importantly, the exchange demonstrated something crucial about modern accountability. In the age of documentation, memory holding your own record is harder than ever. When you've written books, given interviews, sent emails, and made phone calls, someone with enough determination can piece together the truth. Final thoughts: the story of Jasmine Crockett and Bill Barr isn't just about one viral moment. It's about the power of preparation, the importance of evidence, and the possibility of accountability in an era when both seem increasingly rare. It's a reminder that the tools of oversight still work when wielded by people who know how to use them, that homework matters, that receipts matter, that truth, when documented and presented effectively, can still cut through spin and revisionism. For Crockett, it was validation of her approach, that the skills she learned as a civil rights attorney translate directly to congressional oversight. For Barr, it was a harsh lesson that you can't rewrite history when someone has the receipts. And for the rest of us, it was a reminder that in a democracy, even powerful people can be held accountable. You just need someone prepared enough to ask the right questions and patient enough to wait for the wrong answers. Because sometimes, the most effective political moment isn't a dramatic speech or a viral clapback. Sometimes it's just a civil rights attorney from Texas, a stack of documents, and 5 minutes to present the evidence. If you found this story fascinating, hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into political moments that change the game. Drop a comment below. What do you think about Crockett's questioning style? Should more representatives adopt this evidence-based approach? And if you want to see the full hearing, I've linked it in the description. Watch it yourself. It's even more impressive in real time. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.